Hi Saviors, GH here. In this video, I'm going to be showing to you guys the Traveler's strength and weaknesses, the weapons and artifacts you're going to be using, and what to prioritize when it comes to talents. If you're only interested in one of those topics, I will be putting the timestamps in the description of the video so that you can just skip to the part you're interested in. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. Let's do this! Okay, the Traveler. He or she is the main character of the game that is able to change the element depending on the Archon statue currently worshipped. The Traveler's strength lies on the ability to change element, i.e. Animo and Geo. In the future, there will be more Archon statue and who knows if the devs are gonna allow the Traveler to change to another element. Let's talk about the Animo Traveler. Its forte is mobbing due to its ability to trigger an elemental reaction called Swirl, which basically spreads the element combined with Animo. Its elemental skill is Palm Vortex, a skill that forms a vacuum in front of the Traveler that deals Animo damage to enemies nearby. Its elemental burst is Gust Surge. It gives the Traveler the ability to summon a tornado that can pull and carry enemies to further inflict damage to them. And the advantage of Palm Vortex and Gust Surge is you can combine it to another element except Geo. And because of that, it turns Palm Vortex and Gust Surge into an amazing mobbing skill that can defeat waves of enemies in a few seconds. But the disadvantage of that is sometimes there are enemies with defined element above them, like the shielded enemies and slimes. They all have a marked element above their head, and using an Animo ability to those enemies makes your elemental mastery useless, because those enemies are immune to the default marked element above their head or takes reduced incoming damage. Another disadvantage is Gust Surge, because when enemies are larger, they can't be carried away, and that means it will deal lesser damage. Now, the Geo Traveler. Its forte is defense and boss fighting because of its ability to trigger an elemental reaction called Crystallize, and that reaction creates a crystal that will give you shielding. Its elemental skill is Starfell Sword, and it's not a sword by the way. It's a Geo construct that appears below the enemy. It can trigger Crystallize and deal damage. Its elemental burst is called Wake of Earth. It's a Geo shockwave that is centered on the Traveler, and it deals Geo damage to surrounding enemies. This is what makes the Geo Traveler good, because the damage is decent in both mobbing and single target. The advantage of the Geo Traveler is it can give you shielding, hence giving you a way to take on more damage. And it's pretty good to use on boss fighting because in most cases, bosses has a default element and using Geo abilities on them creates shielding that you can use to defend yourself. Another good thing about the Geo Traveler is its ability to create a Geo construct using Starfell Sword, because when boss enemies tries to destroy it, it can also deal damage. For the disadvantage, it's very annoying to use when fighting mobs because the Starfell Sword Geo construct can reset enemies and makes it harder to melee an enemy sometimes. This could be fixed in the future, but for now it's a drawback that makes the Geo Traveler annoying to use for mobbing. And another drawback for using the Geo Traveler is you can't exploit the weakness of most enemies. Therefore, you lose the possibility to deal more damage. Now let's head on to the weapon for the Traveler. So what are the best weapon you can use? And the answer is, it depends on what kind of player you are. If you're a pay-to-win player and your Traveler is your main DPS, and what main DPS means is your Traveler is what you use for basic attacking. My main pick for the 5 stars is the Aquila Favonia. It will provide you with more physical damage bonus and an effect that increases your attack and protects you from one hit every 15 seconds. It can also heal and deal damage. The main reason I picked the Aquila Favonia is because of the substat, its physical damage bonus, and that is what you're gonna need to further increase your basic attack damage. It's much better than the attack stat. And of course, the effect of the sword is just OP. Protects you from damage, heals you, increases your attack. What more can you ask for? My second pick for the pay-to-win weapons if the Traveler is your main DPS is the Battle Pass Sword called the Black Sword. It has a substat of crit rate and an effect that increases your damage dealt by 20% and heals you when crit occurs, which has a cooldown of 5 seconds. The Black Sword is another good sword because it can help you do a critical hit build much more easier due to the fact that you get a substat of crit rate. Now, for the free-to-play players out there, the best weapon for you if your main DPS is the Traveler is the prototype Rancor. It's because the substat is physical damage bonus and the effect further increases your attack and defense as you hit an enemy. How simple is that? And another good thing about this weapon is you can further enhance it because you can craft it, since the materials for making the prototype Rancor can be obtained in the game. You can max out the enhancement of this sword. If your Traveler is not your main DPS and you only use the Traveler for its abilities, i.e. his elemental skill and burst, the weapon that you should use is the Iron Sting, because the substat of the Iron Sting is Elemental Mastery, and that increases your swirl damage. And the effect is when you're dealing elemental damage, all damage increases, and that works with elemental attacks so as your basic attacks. And like the prototype Rancor, you can further enhance this weapon because you can farm the materials needed for making it. Now, to make it understandable, here is my own tier list for the weapons of the Traveler, and 1 is the highest or the best weapon for me. At rank 1, it's the Aquila Favonia. Then rank 2 is the Black Sword. And rank 3 is the prototype Rancor. Then rank 4 is the Iron Sting. I don't particularly recommend using an Iron Sting, but there are instances that you will want more elemental mastery than physical damage, like for example, clearing a domain faster with the use of Swirl. And that is where the Iron Sting shines, and sometimes for Spiral Abyss. Now let's go on ahead to the artifacts. And before we start, the artifacts build that I'm gonna show you guys is gonna be based on what weapon you choose, so please keep that in mind. Now, for the travelers that are still in adventure rank 1 to 30 plus, my recommendation for you if you're using an Aquila Favonia, a Black Sword, or a prototype Rancor is using 2 Martial Artists and 2 Resolution of Sojourner, or 2 Martial Artists and 2 Berserker, or 4 Martial Artists. You can also use 4 Berserker. And for travelers that are adventure rank 35 plus and you're using an Aquila Favonia, Black Sword, or a prototype Rancor, my only recommendation is 4 pieces of the Gladiator set because it will further increase your basic attack damage. Period. It's the best and easiest artifact to get because it's a reward for just playing the game. Now, for the travelers that chose to use an Iron Sting, you can use a 4 pieces of Instructor set, or 2 pieces of Instructor set and 2 pieces of Wanderer's Troop, or 4 pieces of Viridescent if you're using an Animo Traveler, or 4 pieces of Archaic Petra if you're using the Geo Traveler. Now for the substats. These stats under the main stat of your artifacts, what you're gonna want there if you're using an Aquila Favonia, Black Sword, or a prototype Rancor is any of the combination of these stats: attack percent, attack stat, crit rate, and crit damage. Those 4, any combination of those is gonna be good. But don't be too much of a perfectionist cause you will be disappointed. Having just an attack should be fine. If you're using an Iron Sting, just try to get a substat of Elemental Mastery and Energy Recharge followed by attack or crit rate. Any combination of those. Now for the artifact main stats, and this is for players with an Aquila Favonia, Black Sword, or prototype Rancor. Okay, for the Flower of Life, we have no problem there because it's always HP. For the Plume of Death, again, we have no problem there because it's always attack. And here, the Sands of Aeon artifact. The main stat that you're gonna be wanting here is attack percent. Only attack, nothing else. For the goblets, it's physical damage bonus. As much as possible physical damage bonus because this is better for increasing basic attack damage. And it's the only artifact that can give physical damage bonus. So it's imperative that you get a physical damage bonus for your goblets. But if you can't find any physical damage bonus, an attack percent would suffice. Now for the Circlet of Logos. What you're gonna want here is crit rate. As much as possible crit rate because this is the only artifact that offers a lot of crit rate. About 31% if you're using a gold artifact. Now, if you're using an Iron Sting, for the Sands of Aeon artifact, you're gonna be hunting for a main stat that is Elemental Mastery. As much as possible, this should be Elemental Mastery because this is the only artifact that will offer you Elemental Mastery as the main stat. I don't wanna say go for attack percent because the Elemental Mastery on this artifact is vital. As much as possible, get an Elemental Mastery, and if you're just bad luck, you can settle for attack percent. For the goblets, you're gonna be looking for elemental damage bonus. If you're an Animo Traveler, look for Animo damage. If you're a Geo Traveler, look for a Geo damage. And if you can't find those, an attack percent would suffice. For the circlet of logos, you need crit rate here or attack percent. Okay, now talents. Now, the talents that you need to prioritize here is the normal attack talent. If your Traveler is your basic attacker, you need to max it first, then followed by the elemental skill, then elemental burst. Same for both Animo and Geo. If your Traveler is an elemental mastery type and using an Iron Sting, of course, the elemental skill will be a priority followed by the elemental burst. Okay, opinion time. In my opinion, the Traveler is one of the best characters in the game because of its ability to change elements. As a main DPS, you will not be disappointed for leveling the Traveler because all the constellations are obtainable in the game and its boss fighting capability and mobbing is great. If you're a free-to-play player, the Traveler is a must for you. If you went the Elemental Mastery route and using an Iron Sting, it's decent, it shines more for mobbing and doing quick runs of domains in Spiral Abyss, but it fails when it comes to boss fighting because you need a strong basic attack when facing bosses. And that's it guys, the Traveler Guide. Hope this helps, and if you wanna help me back, leave a like, share, and please share because the YouTube ain't promoting my stuff. And subscribe, of course, to be part of the Gaming Hardcore family. And as always, this is Gaming Hardcore. See you in the next one.